Forward Unto Dawn podcast, the show about the lore and universe of the Halo franchise. This is episode number 49. I'm David, and I'm joined by my usual co host, Dani.
Hi, the Hodler.
And our guest this week is Penn's Halo, last seen in November on episode number 46.
Hey, everyone.
So our last episode, 48, was sort of a halfway through impressions episode about the Halo TV show. Now the entire 9-episode series is concluded, so we thought we'd talk about the series overall, what we thought. So I guess we'll start with our guest. Overall impressions, Pens.
I liked it. I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought from a story perspective, maybe not the strongest one, but I thought it was still good. It kept me entertained. I think the cast did a really good job. I'll admit, when I saw who they had cast for some of the roles, I didn't know anything about them, but I think all the cast, the Spartans, I thought did really well. I really liked Kai in there as well. I thought Pablo did a great job as Chief. Natasha McElhone as Halsey was great, I thought. I really enjoyed that. The CGI, there were some rough spots in there, I thought, but overall it was really good. And the fight scenes, I think they really hit it there, because to me it seemed like, okay, this is what you would expect out of a super soldier. So overall, I really liked it. Like I said, there were some rough spots here and there, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if we want to go into those are just my general thoughts on that. So
I enjoyed the
Dani?
show. It's cute, nice and simple, and we'll dive past it later.
Yeah, I think overall I enjoyed it. It's definitely interesting once it wrapped up. I had questions from the start about, not that making changes from the core canon is necessarily bad, but why they were making those changes. And I think the final episodes made some of those choices actually make more sense, and I felt better about them. I definitely agree that I think sometimes the writing let them down. The actors all sold themselves on it. They did a good job. It is one of those like glib internet things to complain about. Oh, the CG is so fake. I do think of all the ways that the show could let me down, I was sort of expecting it to be much worse from a writing standpoint, but very pretty. And I actually felt like it was more in the middle than I expected, that there were more, the writing actually was generally better than I expected, though it has issues. And the CG was less positive. Generally the action scenes were good, but there was a lot of stuff that pulled me out in terms of being very video gamey in a bad way. But I think it left me like excited. We know there's going to be a season 2, like sunk cost, even if even if Halo wasn't doing good, and like as far as we know, it was pretty successor. We're going to get a season 2. I'm excited about it, and we'll talk about that later. I guess I wanted to start so we can talk about, I guess, least favorite episodes. I was looking at the episode list on IMDb, and there's no disputing that there is much angst and wailing and gnashing of teeth on the Halo social media among the fans.
yeah,
For the most part, all the episodes are all rated positively. To some are mixed, but mostly positive. And you can see, I think, some pretty clear indications from the ratings, in that the highest rated ones are the ones that do have some big action set piece. And then the lowest one is the one that focuses all on Quan.
I don't necessarily think. Admittedly, her storyline was one that you kind of sat there and went, you scratched your head out a little bit, but I didn't necessarily think it was bad.
Yeah.
Admittedly, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to see it was kind of hard to see the linkage between the two. Although by the end of what was that 7 episode?
Yeah.
No,
Inheritance was episode 7.
Yeah, episode 7. You kind of got the feeling, okay, it's everything's tied to magical. It seems so. It's like, okay, I can see it now. So
Yeah, I'm not sure. It'd be curious. I mean, we're not going to get a real like frank discussion of the production of this for a while, but I'll be curious if the magical stuff was more of a point, and then it sort of got through rewrites or changes adjusted. Because I think in the season as a whole, just not what they're going to build on in the future, etc., you could sort of basically have left Soren and Quan on the rubble and moved on and not lost anything. Because, like you were saying, even if it was fine by itself, it didn't really tie in with where everything else was going.
right.
I mean, like you can say, all right, well, there's some Blessed One stuff going on with magical. Maybe since they found the artifacts there's some link, but it doesn't seem like it ties in with the rest of it, and it's hard to see because they went in a different direction where the human insurrectionist side is not a huge part besides being a background texture. It's hard to see where that develops in the future. The thing I do, well, some stuff is like, all right, you proved me right with my naysaying. I do think overall the thing I was sort of like when all the talks about cast and stuff were coming out was the role of McKee. And I mean, she might, spoilers, might not be dead at the end of this. She might be, we'll have to see. But I think sexy times with Master Chief aside, she was a really interesting character, and I liked they gave her motivations made sense, and you felt for her even at the end, that she's making choices that make sense to her, that are bad for everyone involved, but like even she's trying to help in the end, and that's what gets her killed. I thought there was a nice little tragic figure element going on with her
Really?
storyline.
What gets her killed? The end? Her dedication to finishing the great journey and participating. That's what literally got her killed in the end. Don't be
Well,
whitewashing her now. Come on.
I mean, but she because from the editing, it's she sees like, oh, Chief and company are going to get overwhelmed, and so she touches the artifact because she knows that's going to do. And obviously, it works out way better than she probably could have intended. And like doing the divine wind to blow all those elites off the cliff. But it was actually trying to help the humans, or I guess really Master Chief, because she could really care less about.
Yeah, I think she was definitely more trying to help John on that one. But yes, that is definitely what got her killed, because in trying to just protect John, they were abandoning the other Spartans, and Kai really didn't have much of an other choice on that. And even John was like, "No, you need to let it go."
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see, because I definitely agree that the interplay with the Spartans, I ended up liking. I thought it was early on. I was like, all right, so they're all gonna like take out their chips or whatever, but they don't, which I thought was a nice touch. And that they go back to, all right, we've got this interplay between the strong team that all cares about each other and knows how to do the job.
Well, the scene where they're getting into the Pelican at 9, it's like, I can't believe you would have the whole thing. Like, I can't believe you would have shot me, and that whole byplay is great.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole point of the Spartans is like, well, Kai, you would have shot me, and she's like, yes, but the difference is I would feel bad about it. That was a nice little touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, and the other character thing that made more sense when we finally got to the end was I've forgotten the actor, but the actor who plays Keys is that
Dani Sapani.
because throughout I was kind of confused, and I think what they ended up deciding to do was they needed Keys because they wanted the connection to Halsey and Miranda, but they also wanted, functionally for the most part, he's playing much more of a Sergeant Johnson like buddy to Chief. Like we don't see him doing much captaining. He's boots on the ground. So that was an interesting choice, but I think they sell it when they have him like come clean to these Spartans, that justified the choice a bit better to sort of combine.
Can I just
these
ask
characters.
what the does he actually do there at the NSC base? Like he's the captain, like you said. He's not. What does he do other than walk around and sort of react to people?
Yeah, he's kind of like. It feels like he should be more an admiral.
Yeah,
he's mostly sitting in the thing along with Parangoski and talking about stuff.
I don't actually know what he does. Like the show did a really piss poor job selling a lot of the UNSC side of stuff because they just stand around in very empty rooms, not doing much for a long periods of time. It's like that's
yeah.
not
I think
there. Like,
I think in terms of the negatives, for me, a lot of it came down to, I don't want to say nitpicks because that implies that either I'm being totally pedantic but just like the mechanics of getting from certain scenes, like, yeah, what is Keys doing, or how does McKee get off of Reach in a Covenant dropship without getting
they left the door open. They freaking left the door open. Yeah. And nothing fires at it. There's no defenses around this entire military installation at all to do anything. Come on.
There's plenty of like, I saw a lot of complaints about like, why didn't they shoot the prophets at the end? Like there's just a line of dialogue or a scene where they like shoot in their shields. Like there were just little things like this didn't have to be something to bother you about it. I think the final battle was especially an example of, I guess, just the limited mobility of the practical Spartan suits is kind of a problem because no one is basically taking cover. They're like all standing up instead of like, I mean, guys, you just got to get behind something. It's like not something that in the sweep of the episodes bothers me, but in the moment it takes me out a little bit. Especially since like it's definitely one of those jokes like, oh, he's always taking off his helmet, considering we do get a fair amount of like inside the helmet shots. I guess it's just like kind of not trusting the audience to like really connect unless you can fully see them emote. It just feels like, no, you could have done this and everyone could have had their helmets on.
Guys, we know like Iron Man fixed the whole you can't see your high star. You know what I mean? Your star talent, you can see him. We've solved that problem. Why are we pretending it's still a thing? You know what I mean?
Well, or they should have gone the other thing they do with Iron Man, and they figured out for ODST was just like polarizing the helmet. Like that might have been a better option too.
Well, the only thing I would say yeah, I mean, there are certain scenes that just it scratches your head, but you head scratch at. But in the scenes where Spartans are not directly in combat, I can understand them not having their helmet on.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, when they're taking off in the Pelican, I'm like, they should probably have they're in space. Like you should probably have your helmets on.
I did laugh that I don't think they were totally hanging a lantern on it, but I do like that Kai takes off her helmet to talk to the Spartans, and it makes sense in an emotional, like, I'm trying to connect with you way that she does it, like, because they're not directly in combat or whatever. And then she's immediately rewarded with getting clocked for trouble.
Yeah.
Like, that's why you keep your helmet on.
Yeah, no, that was a really good example of it. It was just so blatantly silly to the plot that you walk into this room surrounded by people who have threatened and are doing you harm, and then you would expose yourself and make yourself weak and vulnerable in a very high tense, threatening situation that you rushed yourself into. It didn't really make too much sense.
Yeah.
I think that's something that can be easily improved.
Actually, I have a wee question for you. Is what do you think we missed? There was 10 episodes, 10 hours. We didn't get 10 hours. We didn't get 10 episodes. What storyline? What
we
thing
originally
did we
promised 10 episodes?
Yeah, 10 episode order it was at Showtime. They said 10 hours and 10 episodes, and we did not get that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe some connection for the Quan thing would make sense. I'm not sure.
Maybe that, or maybe a little bit more with McKee.
Yeah, I don't feel like the sexy times did feel like if they were going to do that, it was sudden. But I'm not sure in terms of how things were paced. Overall, I didn't have a major issue with like things for especially modern stuff. You think, all right, you've only got 9 episodes. How can stuff be dragging so badly? And I didn't feel like that was an issue with this. Even if some of the storylines are like, all right, I'm not sure about it. Like, I never felt like anything was really dragging.
Yep. Maybe, yeah, I guess the stuff with Quan, specifically with Madrigal and Venture, maybe because I don't know, if there's anything that I think there were probably it felt like there were some gaps in the story, it's probably in there. Like you said, maybe just from a relevancy standpoint. But
yeah, I think it's kind of tough. I was looking over, like, trying to decide what was my favorite
I think it's
episode.
fair to say we all have a least favorite episode. Like, most people's will just like poop on the Quan focus one because it was generally regarded as not being the favorite. I don't think.
Yeah, it does feel. I laughed when there were people like talking about like they got Dune in my Halo, and I think maybe they were trying to go with that like space mysticism thing, but it didn't quite gel. Especially since it didn't have direct relevance to. If there was something about the control of Madrigal applies directly to something that's going on Reach or whatever, you can see the relevancy more. It's a little tougher.
I thought the whole the way they were trying to introduce the concept of isn't it the Geese or the Gaius from
Gesh.
From the extended lore, that was so ham-fisted. And it's such a very silly, high sci-fi concept you're trying to explain to a casual audience. It's like, you could just tuck that away later on. After you have a few seasons of confidence of just showing but not telling, you know what I mean? You just could tuck that away in there somewhere. But no, first season, do it with the least popular character and just make it not good, you know? Like, if I was a casual viewer watching that, I'd be like, what the fuck is that noise? You know?
I do think the other interesting thing was, so I thought from the start, all right, we're going to get more insurrectionist stuff. And then when we had McKee become more involved, I assumed the ending would basically be the fall of Reach. So they zagged where I thought they would zig.
Why did everyone think that? I've seen some reviews as I was watching the series, and people kept saying, "Oh yeah, the Reach is going to fall at the end of the show, end of the series, whatever." I was like, "What the hell are people watching?" This is significantly before that time. That's not happening at the end of the season. It might be hinted at at the next one, at the end of the next one, not this one. Why Reach won't fall because Master Chief had sex? That's not going to be, and then Reach fell. You know, it's like, come on, the timeline didn't make sense.
I think mostly it was people just assuming that, oh, well, next season they'd cover a game or something like that, that this was all going to be a prologue and quickly get shunted onto the next thing. It was out of series speculation more than stuff that was really informed by the text.
Yeah, because everything in the show indicated that they were definitely going at a slower pace at a much earlier point in time, and we weren't going to jump to the big moments, you know what I mean, anytime soon.
People, there were a lot of people who were really trying to, and then I'm like, it's not. You got to you have to think of it as like the what if or the multiverse that you see in DC. This is not main canon, and I think a lot of people are trying to tie they expect the two to tie together. That's why so many people lost their damn minds about them not playing the games.
Not that they wouldn't have Reach fall, but it also, especially with how they presented Chief in this, we have not spent as much time on Reach, and Chief himself doesn't have as much of a connection to Reach, so it's not as much of a dramatic thing to happen.
Yeah.
It's really also, I think, people just really wanting to get into the fireworks factory because, yes, this absolutely is, I think, lighter on Covenant stuff than some people would probably have preferred. I think in many ways it was smart to, like, because you've only got so much money. It was smart to have them be the punctuation, because we basically get 3. We get the pilot, we get the Reckoning halfway through, and then we get Transcendence.
As well handled as I think the
battles.
Covenant have been in terms of their depiction. What I think they really, really mishandled was keeping them and establishing them as that top tier threat. Like the Covenant and their impact and their success against humanity is still disproportionate to the extreme whenever they do focus on it and let you take it in. But then the show kind of forgets, you know what I mean? It's like there should be nothing more important in this universe right now than stopping whatever those things are from wiping us out. And even the UNSC doesn't seem to be on that point. You know what I mean? Sometimes they are, but nah, just don't worry about it, you know?
Yeah, like it does seem like Halsey's plans sort of it makes sense that they're the most important thing for her, but that they seem to suck up all the oxygen in a way that doesn't make sense for the rest of it.
Yeah.
Although I think that's definitely an interesting. I've seen very different opinions on Halsey in the show. I think, to me, she works as very much, you took Halsey from 25/25 or whatever, and she made very different choices.
Oh yeah.
And so it's still the same character, but she has sort of siloed herself into this, I guess, more. She's got a little bit more of a mad scientist overarching plot of less the Spartans will help save humanity versus I will use the Spartans to save humanity and
was that
damn the torpedoes.
Was her heel turn a bit unearned? Like her master plan was having these Spartans brainwashed with some kind of Order 66. I'm like, this is barely season 1. What the are they doing here? Like, what is this? Why is there an Order 66 moment in the first season with the Spartans? I wasn't expecting that, and to be honest, I didn't want it.
I think it didn't quite work for me just because we spent, aside from Halsey and Chief, and I think that worked for me. Like, they had people upset that Chief is like gonna try and kill Halsey because he learns he was brainwashed and abducted. I'm like, I might do the same thing. Jerk reaction, but we don't see as much. And I think this is one area where not having other Spartans even periodically in the background hurt, is that we don't see Halsey's connection to the Spartans that way. So when she does pull the Order 66, and she does it at least one time earlier where she's talking directly to the Spartans, we don't see why Kai and the rest of them really have that connection. So that part seemed a little undercooked with the runtime for me.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of get a little bit of it in, what was it, Homecoming, that you got to see some of the background. And, I mean, obviously in the main timeline, Halsey was the one who first encountered John, and they kind of built their rapport there. You really don't get the feel that was the case in the show, but you still get the feeling that John is Halsey's favorite. But yeah, I mean, I mean, that's one of the things from canon that I kind of stayed in the back of my mind, is that Halsey knew every Spartan in armor and would call them by their names, which actually drove most of them nuts, if I remember right. But you don't get that sense in the show. But then again, this is a totally different Halsey too. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's a darker Halsey.
Yeah.
So
And I think
mean,
that is speaking to Danny's thing about how the Covenant don't loom enough, even in the background. Because they don't, she does seem a little more like just crazy town banana pants instead of someone who is absolutely convinced, I mean, it's come down to this. I've got to be the one to solve this problem. We need to advance as a species, and I've got the way to do it. And that's why I'm so focused on this artifact, because we don't get the sense that the Covenant could show up at any moment.
I wonder if that would have been something I would have liked to have seen in that extra episode.
Mm-hmm. And I
it
think
would have actually
sometimes it works when the Covenant just show up, like in the Reckoning or whatever, because they just immediately take out the air sport, and everyone's like, "Oh crud," and that sells them better. But the fact that we don't, aside from, I guess, in the second to last episode, we get a planet getting glassed or whatever, like, but for the most part, that's not being seen.
Was that the reaction shot we got for like 10, 20 seconds at most? Just a GIF playing on some screen, and we watched people react to it for a few seconds and then pulled away.
Yeah, like,
yeah,
and that was fine, but I think we needed more of that sort of stuff going on, and just more urgency in the direction of, like, I don't know, if you want to have them be like downfall style bunker scenes at Reach, to kind of give that sense that
I'm just very disappointed. The whole idea of glassing a planet, is the scale and the horror of it is just mind blowing. And I think for such an interesting visual medium that we have, why didn't we explore that? Yeah, why didn't we explore any of that? That could have been a big talk about moment, you know what I mean? Of actually depicting the horrors or something like that. Because everyone who's played Halo knows what glassing is, but we haven't really seen it. You know what I mean? We haven't really seen it up close, a bit more viscerally. A TV show could do that.
That's how they start the Fall of Reach, is that Chief wins a cool battle, shows how kick-ass the Spartans are, and then they still lose, and everything gets glassed. So that would have been pretty effective at setting that up.
I mean, well, I think the way they started episode 1 was fine. Thinking about it, and with what Dani said, I think if you would have started with seeing an unnamed planet, whatever planet here, insert planet name here, actually getting glassed as part of the intro, even if it's only been like 4 or 5 minutes by the Covenant, you would have immediately gotten a sense of, oh, damn.
Yeah. Or, I mean, obviously it would have dramatically changed things, but if Madrigal got destroyed after they got the artifact out and stuff.
Yeah, I did expect some kind of payoff. I thought something with Quan would have tied back into it. I mean, something they tie into the big giant threat that no one's really paying attention to, and it's just like crawling closer sort of thing, but it just never happened. I thought it might have been an easy shorthand or shortcut way of explaining to the casual audience, oh, these aliens are horrible. Why? They can do nukes times a million. How about that? They can do nukes times a million anytime, anywhere. It's scary enough. You don't need to explain it past that.
I did really like the last episode. It killed off the creepy snivelly guy.
Aiden, yes.
Yeah, he got what was coming to him. But I did not see the clone fake out coming, so I give Halsey props there. Because they foregrounded it early on. I did not expect that was gonna make
it. Was a good ploy. Yeah, it was a good ploy.
Yeah. They I mean, throughout the show they always gave the impression that she was smarter than everybody else, that she can anticipate more than anybody else. So that just kind of just fully sells it right there. Although I'm trying to figure out how she could just be sitting there writing in her journal on a planet where everyone knows who she is.
No, I guess.
But just chalk that up to TV.
Isn't it the same planet that has like security cameras and drones flying around, and like they've total security state apparatus there to watch everyone. Essentially, that's what they sort of offhand demonstrated with the background stuff going on.
Yeah, that's not TV doesn't really understand that because it's not dramatic storytelling. It ruins too many things. So let's not have cameras everywhere. Yada yada yada. Although we can have a live feed from a planet away, so that's not an issue. Yeah. I guess any other general thoughts about characters, arcs?
No one's mentioned the cameos of one Atriox at this point. It's like that's the big 343 main character guy. He's all over this TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he definitely showed, and I liked how they showed that he was still kind of like the one to beat, because I mean that's part of what makes Atriox such a great character in the main storyline, is that he handed Master Chief his backside. You know, he essentially broke Douglas in Halo in the opening scene of Halo Wars 2. So, you know, he definitely seeing him there, and I thought it was a pretty good impression to have that, you know, this is a guy this is something that can actually go toe to toe with a Spartan and, you know, beat them.
And I appreciated that. I mean, literally, there's no drop of his name unless you have the subtitles on. So I appreciated that I could see a thing where they introduced Atriox and it was much more on the nose, like, hey, this guy, yeah, and like drew a lot more attention to it in a way that wouldn't make sense for what like a random person watching this is gonna make of it. So I like that he's this big, imposing guy who you're gonna recognize when he shows up again in season 2 or whatever. But it was not, hey, this guy will be important later, kind of.
What one thing I didn't appreciate though was how it made the reverence the Covenant had for specifically Master Chief calling him demon. It would make no real fucking sense if there's a fucking mountain of a monkey right beside him that could absolutely demolish Chief. Like, it's like, oh, really? Like, the Chief's reputation was supposed to be like earned, and Monkey Boy was tossing him around like he was a ragdoll. It's like, well, no, why would they even care about some ragdoll against Monkey Mountain? You know what I mean? I thought that was kind of weird. How it struck a very weird tone for me.
Well, I think we just don't see enough of like Chief's campaign against the Covenant and
any of it. There's none of it. None of that damn show establishes any reason why the Covenant would give him a special name. It makes no sense. Mm-hmm. Maybe Spartans in general, but we don't even have that either. Like, Spartans being called demons would have been a lot more sensible to what they were trying to do, but there was none of that. There was none of it. It was just they have a special name for our main character for some reason. Okay.
Yeah, I think surprisingly, in terms of, I'm kind of surprised that was an issue that they didn't, like we were talking about, that the Covenant threat isn't more established. Like, because in the first episode, you're like, oh, these guys they think the Covenant's mostly a myth or whatever. Like, oh, this is more early in the timeline, or
yeah.
But no, like they make it clear, and then later on, Parangowski's like, well, we've been fighting these guys for so long, and we still don't know a lot about them. To what we see later, that they kind of, maybe it's just something that got changed through editing and writing and later stuff, that the scale and scope of the Covenant War just is not fully established in a way that feels like it's totally consistent. And it's a shame from the Covenant side, because we don't get a ton of them, but I like my schemy prophets.
I think the depiction of the Covenant in general has been exceptionally well done. Like, they translated the Covenant almost perfectly. All the bad guys, they're perfect in terms of how they look, how they act, how you expect them to interact with the Chief. Like, almost every wee note they hit. So I can forgive any small details they may not hit out the park on their first go, because I just thought that was very, very well done. In general, like, I can't offer any advice. Oh, they need to do this next season, or they need to do that. Apart from one thing, I need a ghost. Damn it.
Wonder Ghost. Yeah, and I think actually one thing I liked, which again like underlines this sort of tragic thing, is we see kind of like a pseudo familial thing with McKee and Regret, and then the last episode comes along and they make it clear, oh yeah, like we do not care about it at all, like even in like a like favorite pet kind of way. Like once she's done her use, like she's gonna burn like with everyone else. Like that's great. Um, it just makes it extra like, yeah, you weren't even like gonna be the one of the good ones who would survive. Maybe
Right.
you were just always gonna be set up for a bad end.
I mean, I know that was one of the things leading into the show that people was like, well, why is there a human in the Covenant? I mean, that makes no sense. They don't do that.
To be fair, they did change how the Covenant and how that relationship works between humanity and the Covenant. They did change
Right.
a couple of core components, which allows for that now essentially without breaking things.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I think that with Transcendence, at least, you could sit there and say, okay, this is the Covenant that we know. That they're they focus on the great journey, and they will get rid of anybody that stands in their way, kind of a thing. And
like they've leaned on, because from Halo 2 and Halo 3, it was always one of those things like, what does truth know about what the rings do, etc. This makes it clear that in this universe, the Covenant know that to some degree they're weapons of mass destruction. They just think that they're going to be the ones who survive it.
Yeah.
To set it up for the future. Well, which is a good point. Unless anyone has anything else to talk about, we can talk about where we want to go for what we expect to see, what we want to see for season 2.
All right, how you want to handle this? Because I have some meta stuff I would like to talk about in terms of how I think they're going to react to the viewers.
Let's metagame it. Sure, go for it.
Rather than how the stories, because there's different areas to talk about. You know what I mean? But I do think there's going to be a very sharp, because it's 343. They can't help it. Like they're the most some of the most reactive people I've ever seen as a company. Like they react and pivot so dang hard when it comes to trying to appease the fans or trying to appear more reactive to fans' wants and desires. So I can't imagine them not doing some pretty hard pivots meta wise next season. Like guaranteed.
Yeah, because we know they haven't. I mean, I'm sure they've written a lot of stuff, but they haven't gone into production. So theoretically, anything could change at this point.
One of the reasons why I would suggest that is the first season. It lost its showrunners before the season even came out. The creative showrunners were not confident or caring enough to stay with the show past the first season and couldn't even stick with the show before it even came out. Which means that they have a void to fill for season 2, which, if you're making changes, there you go. There's your golden opportunity to make changes and not have a strong creative person there to kick back. There's no one there. They're all just being paid to do what they're told. And I feel it'll be a very top-down corporate. We're going to make these changes because this is what our data tells us to do.
But I mean, I could see that, but I based upon people that I've known who's seen the shows, the ones who actually know the Halo name only, and have never played the game, or maybe played one or two of them, most of them have liked the show. They've enjoyed it. They thought it was good. It was entertaining. Most of the us here and most of the other people I know in general have had a pretty positive reaction to the show. Now, I think that there's still a decent amount of people who have been exceedingly vocal on their dislike for it. But I hope 343 doesn't pivot too hard on it.
Well, to some degree, I feel like, I mean, we don't know entirely what the relationship between 343 and the production is, but if they were like truly, because this is one of those things, it's been in production so long, and they, like, as 343 is reactionary, it would never have, the show wouldn't have ended up in the form it did if they were trying really hard to cater to them. So I definitely think they will make changes to please the hardcore fans, because hardcore fans are a huge thing. But as far as we know, it's one of those things you can't tell these days, really, because everything's a black box with how well it's doing on Paramount. I'm sure they have all the stats, so they know if the average person is really enjoying it or whatnot. And so we will see there.
I really do wish we had a better idea of the viewing figures, because initially when it came out, the network would always say the good things. It's amazing, it's setting records, it's all this fluffy noise that doesn't really tell you anything. It's like, well, how did it really do? And because they renewed it for a second season before the first season even came out, it's like, again, you can't really tell if it's doing well or not, because it's automatically
I'm
renewed.
sure it absolutely got a ton of people watching it. How many stuck to the end, like in the era of streaming where you can watch anything else? Who knows? I mean, it's the only reason I was subscribing to Paramount Plus until Lower Decks Season 3 comes out. But
I can recommend, just a total side note, if you're a fan of The Godfather, the show The Offer is actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, I've heard good things about that. I mean, that's the thing.
That's something else to use the Paramount Plus subscription for.
Well, I've got it. I've got it. Like, I'm not paying for it because I'm using my Game Pass free month. So either way, it's all worked out for me.
There you go.
They're only launching Paramount Plus over here in the UK after trying to screw over Star Trek fans by doing really dodgy things with the content when they really didn't have a channel or streaming service to put it on. But now they do. It's coming. Yeah. But no.
But yeah, so what have you... One is... Because Halo... Did it even come out there yet?
No, hell no. The channel it's on, it's not even
so
out here
when
yet.
is it coming out on Paramount Plus when it launches, or is it still going to be on like UK Netflix?
That's a fantastic question. I'm sure someone cares enough to ask those people about it, but I don't.
Oh yeah, hopefully if it's on Paramount Season 2, they'll like be reasonable human beings and launch stuff at the same time.
Yeah, all the Star Trek shows will be migrating over there as well. So they had so much issues with licenses and doing that, and like it's a joke. Like, we don't need another streaming service. No offense to all the good shows that are on the damn service, but we don't need another one.
Well, hopefully when you get Paramount Plus, it'll be a little bit better than it is here, because it's not great in terms of like basic things of do I start it and it will run? Oh wait, no, it's going to tell me to turn off my ad blocker. I turn off my ad blocker, it will still refuse to play the episode. You have to kind of like refresh it a couple times. It's not great. But in terms of what's gonna change, I think to some degree, some of the complaints people had are sort of going to get addressed. Just where we end in Season 1, like Chief is currently incapacitated and being run by Cortana. But we have that moment where Chief, like, all right, you've come clean to me, I trust you. And so when in episode 1 or maybe 2 of Season 2, when Chief gets snapped back, their relationship is going to be much more like it is in the game. So like stuff like that, I think, is already going to be addressed. Yeah, I mean, maybe they'll keep the helmets on more. Like some executive has scribbled some notes in the margins. Keep the helmet on for this scene or whatever. And I think we're gonna, like, the Spartans. I don't know if they'll do something with the de-chipping the rest of them, but they're much more in. Like they're back on the same side.
So the
Covenant.
I have a wee question about the implications of the Spartans. If you said by de-chipping them there, it just made me think about it. Whenever Halsey implemented her Order 66, right? Whenever she did her Order 66, was it just limited to the small amount of Spartans on that really small UNSC base on Reach, or was it all the Spartans everywhere, like Order 66? Like, did she have like a few hundred Spartans ready to fight for her right now? We just don't see off screen.
I think it's just supposed to be
all the Spartans. Then is that it?
Yeah, that's one of the things they don't totally spend a lot of time outlining. And I get why you would be, if they hand wave the other Spartans, then you'd be wondering why aren't the other Spartans involved. But yeah, it's not entirely clear.
You get the impression that Silver Team are the last of the Spartans,
or at least that's the impression I got. Like the other ones are busy doing stuff, and Silver Team is the best. They definitely
or the ones who are the least busy because they sit around doing bugger all most of the time in that base.
Bugger all on Reach.
It just didn't feel like a war
Reach
setting.
City.
Reach City. Come on, jeez. Wow, that was special.
They didn't. It seemed it was definitely sci-fi, but it was not military sci-fi. I think they didn't lean as much into the military side of it, other than like the uniforms and things and the rank structure.
The most vociferous criticism I've seen are from like the real military sci-fi fans, because there's not. You are going to be bothered by the helmets and weird tactics stuff constantly, and that's just not.
To be fair, if you're going into the show expecting aliens, then that's not what you're going to get. You're never going to get that aspect of nothing but that aspect and have that front and center for a primetime TV show trying to reach a wide audience these days. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and so I am curious to see, like, obviously they've set up, I guess the next season can be the Hunt for the Halo, the Fall of Reach, that kind of thing.
Right.
This season, like, we kind of got a sense of, all right, this is how many aliens they can have. I guess Halsey's machinations are going to be a big thing. I'm not sure, or maybe the insurrectionist stuff comes back. You've got to have, if the drama isn't necessarily Chief finding out his origins, I'm not sure where they go for the human stuff.
Are you not excited for Kwan's next part of her Kwan's journey? Is Kwan and Liam amazing?
I want Kwan to get a much better haircut and kick some ass, and then tie that back into the main story, and I'll be happy. I think she's a great actress. Not a great amount of stuff done, but I there's no bad character, only bad writing. So I want to see her come back and tie in more meaningfully and give her some cool stuff to do, as opposed to being kind of whiny.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a. I mean, you kind of feel it as someone who never. I don't know if appreciated is the right word, but never got why her father was doing what he was doing, and she just wanted to get that. She just wanted to. She didn't appreciate like the whole struggle thing until the one episode.
I mean, like, you literally open the series. She's just sneaking off to get high and waiting to leave the planet. It's one of those typical things with media. Like, she is acting totally reasonable and totally like a teenager, but that is always frustrating depending on the kind of story. You're like, yes, but it's Hollywood. You don't want people to actually act like people in real life, because that's terrible.
Not entertaining, dang it.
Yeah.
I do kind of want, like, I mean, I'm totally fine with her and Soren just like continuing to be a weird odd couple.
That dynamic kind of surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
That I enjoyed it as much as I did, because, like, I mean, just you figured, okay, you know, Soren, how are they going to handle that, knowing that, and it was just your first experience on the rubble, which I thought that visually was great, that the way that they did the rubble. But I think, I mean, it's just a weird, you know, Soren, who's like pretty much overly like a real cynical, materialistic person. Then Kwan's kind of growing out of that, and it was still real. It was an interesting dynamic, and yeah, you're right. It's this weird odd couple kind of thing. That was
also I like that
good.
Soren, and I think that's just really a credit to Bokeem Woodbine that he works it, is that he manages to be incredibly menacing, and you know he will crush someone's skull if he wants with his giant misshapen hand, but also he's kind of like more swagger than actual sense, and he gets his ass handed to him by a kid who just like realizes she can hide and beat him over the side of the head.
C for Soren, I didn't bring this trope into the damn show, but because it's in the show, I'm going to use it. Soren is one of those characters. I hope next season he gains a dead spouse for motivation. I think he could benefit from that, and we as viewers could benefit from that. You know, it's just a handy trope.
Well, that's a good point, that they have introduced the rubble, so doing something with the rubble seems like it could have a thing. He's got a kid Will the kid survive?
Mhm.
I hope the kid survives, but the wife is kind of in her own show already. So if she gets fridged, that's not the worst thing. she's just gonna be like the rubble's getting glassed, and she's still hitting like whatever like drug, and she's like, yeah, just gonna go that way. Yeah, that's a good point. The rubble's out there. I can do something with that. It was a cool location.
Just
that fits your human drama.
Yeah, I just think, like you said, next season I hope to see more of the pursuit for the ring. I don't know. I think 8 or 9 episodes might be good if you can keep the story, kind of tight. I don't think you necessarily. I mean, I don't want a lot of filler episodes. I like how. I mean, maybe other than the one with Quan, but in general, every episode was needed. That's not the right term, but it kind of it had some impact. So, and I think that if they were to try to draw that out over more than 10 episodes, I think it would definitely mean that they'd end up with filler, and that would hurt in the long run.
If they tie everything together, I will be happy. Like, I think you can have the digressions. It's always if they don't relate, like, because in some ways I feel like Quan's episode is kind of like the Halo TV show versions of whatever that Stranger Things episode where 11 goes off to Chicago and hangs out in an 80s punk movie. It does not relate to anything else.
All right.
Also on my list of things I want to see, and I feel like this is easier to animate, so go for it. We need space battles.
Yes.
I like seeing the destroyer or whatever get totally destroyed and just crash into the planet, but I need my space battles. Then we can see Captain Keyes doing captain-y stuff. So win-win for everyone.
Something on the lines of Sigma Octanus's battle would be awesome, because I would love to see that animated, the scene with the cradle. But that's kind of a pipe dream on that one, I know that.
The one thing I do hope they do is they spread the budget a bit more evenly. Because the series in retrospect, like you could see they saved their budget, as it were, for like 3 intense moments that are punctuated the series.
Right.
And I felt like whenever I watched like a really intense bit of action, it was like, now I know I'm not going to get any action for 2 episodes. You just got that feeling because that's the budget there. Okay, now we wait. I don't like that feeling. I wanted a bit more spontaneous things going on. You could tell when the story was going to de-scope again and then re-scope out. And I didn't like knowing that as I was watching it.
That's reasonable.
Yeah. Although I think it was at least in a cadence. The fact that here's the action scene, you're going to know, like, the next episode is going to be a bit down. The episode after that will be a bit down and probably pick up at the end, and then you're going to end up with another like action type one. So I mean, at least it was, you would kind of know that there's a build up, and then there's a
plan. Like there's a genuine plan, and they're executing on it. You may not like it, but at least it's a plan and it's working. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it would be nice if it was like you had a little bit more action, a little bit more intensity on some of these ones, but also I don't necessarily think that character development is out of the realm when it comes to Halo. I mean, there's plenty of it in all the novels. There's plenty of it in the games too, and I think the show needs that, because you need to be able to identify with the characters.
Yeah, because there's not the 30 seconds of fun to paper over everything else.
Exactly. But I mean, I'd like to see, because we're just seeing, I think they've set things up for Cortana and Chief in the show to end up like Cortana and Chief in the games. But you can't, there still needs to be that build up. I think they still need a little bit more build up before that can fully be realized. I mean, the show would need a version of Ackerson's test, I think. I don't know if you actually could do that with Ackerson's test. That'd be awesome to see, but they need something like that to really get both of them in sync together to get to the point where they are in the games. And I think that would be something I'd like to see in season 2. I just don't want to see that like flip a switch and okay, they're good. I think I'd be disappointed in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the first season. It's not what I would have perfectly wanted in an ideal world, but it's a lot better than I was genuinely expecting. I'm very pessimistic, as it were, and I had very low expectations, especially when they cut a whole episode out of the original account. Like it just screams COVID and all the rest of the issues that you would know have come up anyway, in addition to sort of low expectations. So to be mildly blown away sometimes. I can forgive the things I didn't fully enjoy all the time, because whenever I did enjoy, I really did enjoy it, and I was definitely along for the ride. So, yeah, I'm happy.
Well, and I'm pretty confident. Like showrunners and all that stuff aside, season 2s of most shows are better than season 1. So I'm excited to see where we go from here.
I think overall. I mean, I think overall for me, if I had to give it a grade, I'd probably say about a 7 out of 10. Average, maybe a little bit above average, maybe 7.5 to 8. But I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I mean, there were some slow parts. There were some parts that seemed a little clunky, especially in the first couple of episodes. But I enjoyed it. I'll still try to approach season 2 like I did 1. It's like, okay, keep the expectations low, and see where they go with it. Because more than likely, we probably won't see season 2 till what, 2024? Because they haven't started shooting season 2 yet, right?
You might see it. You might see it late next year. To be fair, you might see it late next year.
Well, that wraps it up for this show today. Show notes and links for this episode, as well as articles and more, can be found on our website, FUDcast.com. You can subscribe to the podcast via iTunes, Spotify, or Stitcher. Check out our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/ForwardUntoDawn, or follow us on Twitter with the handle @ForwardDawn. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us, Pens.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we'll see you next time.